All right, what's up, guys? Another episode of the Growth by Shawn podcast. So I'm here with Nicole today. Nicole, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Nicole Resendes. That's how you say
Yes.
your last name. All right.
Yes.
Is that like
Yep.
Portuguese or I
It's
don't know?
so freaking Portuguese. It's there's like nothing higher than that.
Okay, that's what I figured. I don't know like all backgrounds and how
Yeah.
that names kind
Nope.
of work, but
100%.
um yeah, but I guess I'll kind of introduce how Nicole and I kind of became friends or got connected because I'm not really sure. I don't know if it was just like
No.
I don't know if it was just like through the gym we just like saw each other and started like giving each other a head nod or
Oh,
we
I
just
think
like,
so. I think we
things.
we like followed each other on Instagram too. And then
Okay, that makes
I'll
sense.
always ask you for a spot and now we're cool. So
Yeah, and that's about it. So we go to the same gym and then we ended up going to the same event in Scottsdale and that was pretty interesting to say the least. There was a lot of good, some like was just okay, but for the most part it was pretty good. So it was just odd that like we just happened to like both go there and not like let each other know, you
right.
know,
It
you
was
know.
like 2 days before. You're like, "Are you going to Arizona for this?" I was like, "Yes, are you?"
Yep. Yep. So, yeah, how I usually start the podcast is just like a quick little brief synopsis kind of about you, whether you want to talk about like how you got into coaching or where you're at with it now, or a little bit about you, kind of however you want to do it. We can just go from there.
Yeah. So, I've been in the coaching space for a little over 4 years now. Originally, my origin story is like funny. So I was typical like heavy kid all my life kind of thing. And I went to college. I was like, I'm gonna be a gym teacher. This is safe for
Nice.
me. I'm like, no one's ever gonna want to personal train with me. Nice paycheck, like summer's off, let's just do this.
Yep.
So I'm like 2.5 years into my program at Bridgewater, and I have to take gymnastics. I'm 26, and my instructor's like 90. I'm like, I don't think I can do this. I'm like, I don't think my heart is in this. I fought with myself that entire ride up to Bridgewater. I pulled over in the Cumberland Farms parking lot and I never went back. And
Okay.
at that time, I was taking my NASM, but it was kind of like on the back burner, right? Like I'm doing school full time. I drove home and I passed my NASM within that first week, and I dove right into one-to-one personal training, and I never looked back.
Wow.
And
All
now
right.
it's 4 years later. Originally, I was just one-to-one in person. I had a gym with my ex-boyfriend, and I did that for the beginning of my career. And now I'm a year and a half just online coaching now.
Shit. I didn't know you went to Bridgewater. I went to Bridgewater too.
Did you really? What the hell?
Yeah, I don't know. I have
That's
not.
so weird. Like all the
Yeah.
weird connections.
We have so many like overlapping things, just like
That's so
randomly.
weird that we never like. That's
Yep,
so
nope,
funny.
nope. But yeah, so you're part of the team. I met like the girls, I'll say,
Yeah.
like that
So
are on the team. So I kind of
I'm an
want to know
assistant.
like, yeah, how that kind of came about.
I'm an assistant coach with Strong Starts Within, which is like an online coaching platform. Taylor is our CEO, and I was full-time personal training in person, and I had saw, I think like on a business group that I was following on Facebook, I saw that someone was looking for an assistant coach and it was Taylor.
Mhm.
And I was like, screw it. Like, let's give this a shot. I applied with them and she hired me like the next day. So
Wow.
I eventually transitioned away from that one-to-one in person. And now that's all I do is just coach online through Strong Starts Within.
Nice. So I think one of the questions I want to kind of start with is you only coach women, like the whole team only coaches women.
Yeah, as of right now, we only do females. I've coached
Mhm.
males in the past.
Mhm.
I just got my powerlifting coach certification, so I'm looking to dabble a little bit into that realm with males and females.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of like the major differences and like some of the things that I would say you have to look out for when coaching a woman versus coaching like a man?
So I feel like females like me like mindset wise is a little harder for them, right? Because you have like all those societal issues, like you need to be
Hmm.
super skinny, let's kill yourself with cardio. Let's, train differently, stuff like that. For me, I find that females struggle maybe a little bit more with their mindset around
Mhm.
like what's good food, what's bad food, versus the males I've worked with in the past can kind of be a little bit like they're just kind of looking for guidance, versus there's not as much mindset stuff. Not to say that, like, I'm sure some guys absolutely do struggle with that stuff.
Mhm.
But the people maybe I've come across have been kind of like almost cut and dry, I guess. Like, I want to
Mhm.
drop 15 pounds, maybe I want to bulk, versus the ladies, like, we're doing a lot of mindset work behind the scenes of just like, here's your macros, here's your training split.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, um, is it just like the when you say like societal things that like women have to deal with, like can you go into a little bit more detail of like some of the things that maybe you've run across in your life or just uh coaching like these women, like what are some of the main concerns and how do you start to like help them through some of these things?
So, like, primarily my roster right now is probably females who are like 30 years old plus, maybe even a little higher than that.
Hmm.
I think the majority of us actually on Strong Starts Within are dealing with that older generation. So, what I'm finding is a lot of these females are struggling with that, like, the like fad diet mentality, I guess. The I
Mm.
can't have bread, or, this food is bad for you. Let me just eat salad, chicken, and broccoli and like hate my life kind of thing. So I find that we're really breaking that norm of like, hey, there's no good food, there's no bad food. Things are either nutrient dense or they're not. So for
Hmm.
me, like, I come from a really restrictive background. I've dealt with every, eating disorder under the sun, and I still find that a lot of people have that restrictive mindset. So I have to undo that as a coach and let people, like, how do I put this, let them know that it's okay to have a vast variety of food in your diet. Like, you can
Hmm.
have the donut, you can have a slice of cake, you can go out to your family party and still make process. So we're really teaching them how to be more flexible in their dieting efforts. It doesn't just have to be so cut and dry. There's no foods that are off limits kind of thing. I think a lot of the girls that I'm working with are afraid to eat certain foods because they're like, oh, it's going to be stored as fat. And like, I'm sure that's what all those fad diets teach you, like Weight Watchers and stuff like that are drilling that into people's heads, like, oh, this is fattening, this is bad for you, let's
Hmm.
stay away from this stuff. So I find that like the restrictiveness is really something that a lot of females struggle to break.
Okay. Now, since most of your clientele is a little bit older than you are, do you find that they're kind of more set in their ways than when you find someone that's a little bit younger? How do you kind of cross that barrier of these have been my beliefs my whole life. Now they're going to come to you and listen to someone that's a little bit more younger or not like a authoritative type figure in a sense, you know?
Yeah. So I think it's just like, kind of taking time to break that down. Like, I'm a firm believer in, letting them experience it and then having that like neuron connection happen in their brain. So, like, I have a female right now, like, very restrictive past, and we're reverse dieting. I'm trying to get her to eat more.
Hmm.
And she is an older lady. She is postmenopausal, right? I'm
Hmm.
29, what do
Hmm.
I know kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, I'm heavy on the education. So like the what I'll always tell them is like, your body's like one big math equation. If you're gonna eat over your set maintenance calories, it's gonna be stored as fat. And I'm always like, if you want to eat 3,000 plus calories worth of chicken and broccoli, you're gonna hate yourself, right?
Hmm.
But in reality, the way your body works, you're gonna store as fat anything past your maintenance level. So I'll always explain that educational background to them and like, hey, this is really how the body works. Your body's not smart enough to be like, hey, this is a freaking slice of cake. Like, maybe it's the
Hmm.
only thing you eat all day. It's not going to store right to fat, right?
Yeah,
What, 1,200 calories maybe?
yeah.
So really focusing on that educational aspect, and then we will work in those fear foods weekly. I'll be like, hey, like, I want you to track those 2 cookies first and
Hmm.
leave them in there, and let's work everything else around that day. And then the more comfortable they get with eating those foods and realizing that, hey, I'm not putting on weight, right? Like maybe I'm maintaining, they kind of get over that hurdle a little bit.
Hmm. Now, with someone that's like a post-menopausal, or we can go one of two ways with this, either talking about something that's more like a post-menopausal, or um, every month when a woman has like a their menstrual cycle, how does like training and food start to differ when that comes about each month, or does it not?
So
How do you
for
kind of approach it?
me,
Yeah.
so like if I have a postmenopausal client, the first thing I'm going to do is get labs.
Okay.
I'm like heavy on the hormonal health. Typically for me as a coach, if we're really postmenopausal, I like to see those females get their sex hormones run. Typically, we're probably going to need some hormone replacement therapy.
Hmm.
Um, and that's kind of what I like to see. Now, I do have some postmenopausal females who are very responsive without anything. So
Hmm.
it's kind of, I don't want to say trial and error, but if I'm not seeing what I want to see from them, like progress wise, I'm going to push for labs. Chances are maybe we're completely bottomed out and we just need enough to get you to feel normal. So I will not, so for clients who are like, they're still getting their normal cycle, I typically don't change training or food around like their different phases.
Okay.
Um, for me, I like to keep things as simple as possible, right?
Hmm.
But if a client, maybe wanted to, it's something we could do. But for me, I like to, I want this to be as sustainable as possible for you. The last thing I want you to have to worry about is, am I in my luteal phase? Do I need to pull back on training? Obviously, we're going to play into those PMS symptoms. If they're having heavy cycles and ridiculous PMS symptoms, and that's a hormonal issue, like we can tackle that itself kind of thing. I think like I treat everyone pretty much the same in regards to like food, in regards to training. Obviously, training is, what do you have access to? What are you limited by kind of thing. But
Hmm.
I'm not one of those crazy, I don't want to say crazy coaches. I'm not one of those coaches who like are like, oh, like you're in your luteal phase, let's pull this or stuff like that. I just find
Hmm.
that it's not like end all be all, right? Like I can still get you to 100% if we don't have to touch any of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Now
Yeah.
I feel like many of the women, and I may be wrong, but many of the women that you start coaching with, they're more like beginner intermediate type of level. It's not like they're like an advanced type athlete. Yes,
Yeah.
no. Yeah.
I do a lot of general lifestyle. Um, the majority of my women, maybe they've dabbled in weight training, nothing like
Mhm.
super serious. Maybe they're like a group fitness class kind of person.
Mhm.
Um, I think right now Britt is my only like full on athlete, and I'm
Mhm.
actually looking to kind of, I don't want to say switch. I love my general
Mhm.
lifestyle, but I'd love to get deeper into like that athlete kind of mentality.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, so what are some of like the key factors that you are when you're like starting from ground zero with someone? What are the main things that you're primarily focusing on with them? Because I think a lot of like people that listen to this are could be like beginner intermediate. So someone that's just starting like their fitness, weight loss, lifestyle, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Um, what are some of the things that you try to change or look at in the beginning?
So if we're brand new, the last thing I want them to do is bite off more than they can chew because we're gonna last like 2 weeks, then we're gonna phase out, and that I don't
Hmm.
want that, right? So for me, typically I'll have the client and I'll be like, hey, like let's pick one area of focus, like whether it be nutrition or it be you getting consistent in the gym. So I think that's my advice to anyone who's starting out new. Make really small changes and then just build on those. So like let's for instance say I have a client coming to me. We're in a good place for fat loss. She's never really tracked before. I'm probably going to start with calories and a protein goal and let's try and hit that 3 to 4 days this week. And then the next week, let's build on that. Let's do 5 to 6 days. And then, the following weeks, now you're hitting 7 for 7 on food. You feel comfortable. let's now focus on adding your strength training. Let's do 2 days, and then the following week, let's bump it to 3. And then now you have a really nice solid foundation to where if you feel like you can push more, awesome, we're good, right? We're not doing, let's hit food 7 days a week. Let's go to the gym 5 days a week, hit all your water, all your steps from the get-go, because a lot of people, that's a big life change, right? Like
Hmm.
that's massive for people, and a lot of people are going to get overwhelmed and they're going to be like, this is not worth it, it's too much work, like I'm done.
Hmm. So going from in person to online, did you find that it was more difficult um to start to like coach people just from a training standpoint?
So just from a training standpoint, yes, in the sense that like I'm not there, right?
Hmm.
I can't give you cues. I can't see anything. I'm a big, like, I will ask all my ladies for form videos. I will
Mm.
take them any day of the week, anytime. A lot of people are not comfortable with that. So I do think that, from a training aspect, it can be a little hard, especially if the client doesn't have a ton of experience with like, training and strength training in the gym. Our system that we use is really good. We use Trainerize. So
Hmm.
every exercise has a really great video explanation.
Okay.
So like that's very helpful for clients who are new into it. But being online solely, I really try and hammer in like, hey, let's get some training videos in so I can at least make sure that, we're not going to hurt ourselves or something.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was just curious because like I found when I was like doing like online type of like training as opposed to in person, I thought it was super difficult. I could not figure it out how to like I hated having people like send me videos because like even if like they had like a bad angle or something, I'm like, I don't even know where you feel this. Like
Right, right,
how am
right.
I supposed to do this like if I'm not there? So it's always interesting for me to ask someone that's especially gone from in person to online.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I think that everyone like that wants to do online should start in person. Um, just another person's like thoughts on that, especially since you've done it.
So, like, I actually have a couple of clients right now in my current roster who were one
Mhm.
to one in person.
Okay.
Obviously, that transition much smoother. Like,
Hmm.
I know your biomechanics, I know what you're capable of. I'm confident in my form abilities that I've taught you. Um, I think that everyone should invest at some point in their life if they're like brand new in a one-to-one personal trainer.
Hmm.
Just to get a solid base, a solid foundation. Do I think those beginners can do that online? Yes, but you have to be really committed to sending videos with the appropriate angle. If your
Hmm.
coach is asking you for this, like you need to be comfortable sending them that if you have never had any type of experience. I do
Hmm.
think that having that one to one, even if it's like a month's worth, you're just learning basic movement patterns, really does
Hmm.
help with if you're gonna go and follow like an online program.
I'm glad you answered it that way, but I also meant from a coach's perspective. Like, do you think that a coach should start online first, or do you think it's okay? Just kind of an opinion, but still.
Personally, I
Mhm.
think any person who is online coach should start in person, one to one. Absolutely,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Um, like first off, like communication is totally different, right? You're with that person
Hmm.
for a straight half hour to 60 minutes at most, right? I
Hmm.
think it really helps with your communication skills and being able to give form cues in person. um I think that experience, like I wouldn't go back and change this of like
Hmm.
how I ended up online. I think that it's really really valuable to be a one-to-one in-person trainer before you switch to online. 100%.
Hmm. If you
Yeah.
were to name like your three biggest takeaways or your three biggest things that impacted you when you were in person, what would those be? Or even just a couple.
Man, so I think that's hard.
I know.
um so for me, I think like there's something different about meeting people in person and them coming to you and them telling you all their pain points, right? Like
Hmm.
I've had a lot of in-person clients come to me like postpartum with postpartum depression, and the gym was their outlet. I think it says something to be a part of someone's life in person physically. Like you're physically there, we're meeting
Hmm.
every week, you know, that relationship is a little different. I think it's a little stronger, it's a little bit more personable. Um Man, two more takeaways in person.
If you don't, I already have my next question lined up, so it's okay.
All right, let's
Okay.
switch.
Okay. So since we're on the topic of lot like why being face to face with someone is so important as opposed to just being online, um, in like a couple different like aspects of your life. So we both went to the IFCA event in Scottsdale. Um, what were some of like the takeaways from that event and going to something in person as opposed to just like listening to things like online? Because there's information everywhere, but
Yeah,
like going in person to an event is much, much different. Like for me, this was my first event going to something like that.
yeah,
I don't know about you, how many you've been to, things like that. But it was very, very different than just like you can listen to motivation or you can
right.
listen to like educational content on online, but it's not like I'm sitting there like taking notes about it. Whereas something like this, like I was actively listening. I felt like very in the moment, like I'm learning things, like I'm writing down notes. So what were some of like the big takeaways from that being in person as opposed to just listening to things online for you?
I think just the environment that we
Mm,
were in, you know, to be in a room full of like-minded, you know, entrepreneurs or whatever anyone showed up there for. And I think there's something powerful about watching people speak, especially people who are passionate about what they're speaking of. I just
mm,
think the environment is different, right? Like I could have listened to that same speech from Lane Norton in my kitchen. Like,
mm-hmm,
but that I think just having like sitting there going for that reason, everyone being there for the same thing and being able to see expressions on people's faces and how people deliver those speeches, I think it was much more, it was just a bigger takeaway for me. It meant more to me than if I had
mm.
like a podcast going on in the background in the kitchen while I'm doing dishes or something.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Um, I had a question lined up that was really good after this. Shit. Um, but so have you been to like multiple events other than this, or was this your first event that you had gone to?
This was my first event of like any kind of like, you know, speaker presentation, anything like that in person.
Okay. Oh, this is where I was going. So you were just talking about how it was important to surround yourself with like-minded individuals. So I'm not sure how deep we can kind of go with this or what your background is with this, but have there been times in your life where you weren't really surrounded by the right people and you either had to take them out of your life or you had to go and find a new kind of circle? Like, is there anything that kind of resonates when I talk about that that you kind of like talk about?
Yeah, so the first person I could think of is my ex-boyfriend. So,
Mm.
um, like I'm a competitor. I
Mm-hmm.
have plans to compete. Um, so I'm a competitor. I have plans to compete. It's very important for me. Let me shut up. If they hear any, it's like forget it. All
That's
right.
okay.
So, the first thing that I think of is like one of my past relationships with my ex-boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a competitor. I have plans to compete. It's a selfish sport, and
Mm-hmm.
not only that, but like I coach one to one. Like fitness is very much, I don't want to say my entire life, but it's a really big part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was just a very toxic relationship in the fact that like it was always that I was very selfish, or you know, we couldn't go out because I was on my meal plan, I was on my protocol, and I was really focused. it was going to be the first time I was ever going to step on stage. And I've been at this for like 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made me feel like I wasn't supported in the aspect that I needed. I needed a partner to be on board 100% with that. Britt is like my only other outlet, my best friend, of being that one person who really fully understands. So when your partner doesn't align with that either, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you start to put your dreams on hold. And I was missing protocol. I was missing check-ins because I'm trying to, appease that other person, and that I didn't want to be selfish. I didn't want to put my goals first. And the best thing I did was leave that relationship and just kind of put myself first. And then I found Taylor, and I get along great with our other assistant coaches and everyone there. And everyone is just so supportive, so welcoming. And I have a nice, tight group of friends that are not just there for support, but are going to call me out on my shit, which is what I need. Right. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to surround yourself with people who are supportive, but people who are going to tell you like it is. I think you become who you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you opening up about things like that. And I mean, nothing against like anyone like from anyone's like past, they perhaps just didn't align with like our values and things, and like that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I
But
say this all the time, that like people are here for life or they're here for a season, and neither one of
mm,
that is wrong.
yeah. So my biggest takeaway that I want to ask you from there is, why do you think that it's so difficult to put ourselves first sometimes?
Damn, this is like something I struggle with like every
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
I'm a people pleaser, right?
Hmm.
Like I like to see people happy. I like people around me to be happy. Maybe I like people who are empaths, like bite off more than they need to in that regard of trying to make sure that everyone is happy around them. I think maybe there's like a selfish aspect to it, and we don't ever want to be selfish, I guess, per se. But
Hmm.
if I've learned anything in my 29 years of life, is that at the end of the day, like at the end of this life, whatever that looks like for you, whatever you believe in, the only person who is ever going to be there is you. And
Hmm.
there is no reason that you should not try and make yourself happy first. And
Hmm.
I tell my clients this a lot. I get a lot of moms, I get teachers, people who are constantly being pulled in different directions. If you can't pour from your cup, like you're not going to be that good friend. You're not going to be that good teacher. So I think people don't want to be selfish, and they don't want to set boundaries to let other people down.
Hmm. So are there any like tips or anything that you have to um let someone know like how you started to set boundaries with people that maybe you were close with?
I think just having that open and honest communication with
Mm,
people, if
mhm,
you truly believe in your friendship and your relationship, whatever that looks like, just have that honest and open communication. Their reaction is going to be more so a reflection of themselves and maybe what they're dealing with on a personal basis than
mhm,
you, right? Especially if you're
mhm,
someone who hasn't set boundaries before, it can be really, really scary. But at the end of the day, just be honest, have that open communication, let them know right from the beginning where you're going with that conversation, so no one feels off guard, or taken back or
mhm,
anything. I think just, once you have that first conversation and you set that boundary, regardless of how it turns out, I think people do a really good job of showing you who they truly are, and it has nothing to do with who you are as a person or a reflection of you.
mhm. So in regards to like people pleasing, I understand that you're not like a doctor or a psychologist, but I mean, I could probably trust you more than a lot of them anyways. So, um, in your opinion, I guess I would say, because I don't know how much like scientifical, I don't know if that's a word, but either way, fact that you would have here. So, in terms of like people pleasing, do you think that's some type of trauma response, or do you think that's more of a we were born this way as an individual and I need to go and get through this trauma, or I need to go and just like, this is how I am, and I need to balance like my selfishness and my people pleasing.
I personally, this is my opinion, I think
Hmm.
it's a trauma response.
Okay.
Um, like if I look back at my childhood, uh,
Hmm.
like my dad took off when I was little kind of thing. And I think like deep down, people who have been through stuff like that, like maybe you struggle with that feeling of being wanted or keeping everyone happy. And then that translates into your adult life. I think a lot of it is like trauma driven.
Hmm. So things that you have been through, and not that I'm asking you to go into like detail, but are there different ways that you have like, I will put quotations, but like started to heal yourself from or like move past? Are there different things that you've done or that you've seen other people done that you thought was helpful in terms of like getting over these like trauma responses that we have?
Yeah. So I don't know. I had a rough childhood, I guess you could say. But
Mm-hmm.
the biggest thing for me was going to therapy. And there was so much stigma around it. I think maybe I went once in sixth grade and it was for like depression, anxiety. And I had a really bad session with one of my therapists. And from there on out, I was like, I don't freaking need this. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
ever want to go back to this. But the older I get, the more I realize like, wow, you do have a lot of deep rooted stuff. You have a lot of deep rooted trauma issues, a lot of how you interact with people in relationships or with friends or stuff like that, or even like business
Mm-hmm.
is deeply rooted in what you went through as a child. I think the biggest thing that has helped me kind of work through that was going to therapy, was just facing those issues head on,
Mm-hmm.
and starting to like work through them.
Yeah. Do you do any sort of like journaling or like meditation, things like that, in order to kind of like show yourself as opposed to not just from like an outside source of like things that you're going through?
I am a firm believer in journaling. I'm not like one of those like, oh, let me write like, like pretty little lists. And so like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna brain dump. I love to brain dump. Whenever I feel compelled to let go of something, whether it's like anxiety before bed, like I keep my journal near my nightstand and I will just write anything down. For me, what I'll do after I journal is I'll sit and I'll be like, okay, is this in my control? Like, do I
Mm-hmm.
even have control over this? If I don't, like, it's something I need to let go. I'm big into grounding. So I
Mm-hmm.
love to go outside, like touch the grass. It's cold as hell right now, but like,
Mm-hmm.
like I like to be in nature, going out on walks without anything, taking time away from my phone because I work from my phone pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So journaling for me, being out in nature and being able to ground myself are huge.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. So like, do you think that you're like addicted to your phone in some type of sense?
So it's
Just
hard,
curious,
right?
just curious. Yeah.
Because like in a way, yes, only
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the times, like as an online coach, especially primarily through Instagram, I feel
Mm-hmm.
compelled to show up a lot, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I need to sell myself, sell my brand.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, absolutely. Like, could I do without my phone a little bit more? I do. I think so. But like just from a business standpoint, I'm like my hands are tied in a sense. So when I'm done with work for the day, I really try not to go on my phone. Like I try and
Mm-hmm.
be present, like with the dogs, or like sit and watch Netflix or something, and try to
Mm-hmm.
unplug as much as I can.
Mm. I asked that because this is kind of like a preempt to my next question. So for us, like we live in Mass, how do you find that you're able to like go outside and like enjoy like nature and the outdoors even when like the temperatures aren't actually exactly like in our favor? Things
Yeah.
like that.
I like the cold. I'm like
Hmm.
weird. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
like I do enjoy like the fall, the colder months.
Hmm.
Um Maybe I'm not going on as long as the hike as I would.
Yeah.
Like I love to go to Battleship because the sun's out and just get the water
Hmm.
going and stuff. I just dress really freaking warm and I try my best to get out as much. Obviously, like it's freaking 30 degrees outside. I'm not gonna stay out for like an hour or something, but even like I find like 10 minutes a day, like
Mm,
maybe 15, if I could do a really short walk or just kind of sit with the dogs and chill, it really
mhm.
does help me feel like calm and
Yeah,
grounded. So, and you know, if it's snowing outside, like I'm shit out of luck. You know, like I'm
yeah,
not going out in the snow. So
yeah. It just happens. So
yes.
yeah. But I feel like this is a good place to uh kind of settle in and call it because I feel like we just bombarded like a ton of information. I feel like I asked you like 50 questions. And I feel like both of us just talk like so fast sometimes that
Mm,
we answered like a bunch of different things. So I feel like there's a lot of good takeaways, especially for like women that are not exactly like my audience per se. So like
yeah.
people that do listen to this that are women, they can take a lot more away from this. So do you have any closing like messages that you can like leave us with in terms of anything that we may have talked about or not talked about?
Mm, I don't know. That's tough. Yeah, I guess I have like a little bit of like fitness advice I can say.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Like I think anyone who is on this fitness journey, this wellness journey, one, I think it should be more than just your physical. I think it should be, you know, your physical, your spiritual, your mental. I think wellness needs to be looked at as a whole versus just how much do I weigh, how much can I bench kind of thing. And the time is going to pass no matter what.
Mm,
So stop looking at, you know, to get to the top of the staircase because you are going to hate every freaking step if you're just focused on that end goal. I think, you know, focus on one step at a time. And before you
mhm.
know it, you're going to be at the top of the steps.
All right, that makes a lot of sense, and that's an easy little analogy to run with. So,
There you go.
um, why don't we just let us know like where we can find you? I'll make sure I tag it in the show notes, things like that, and uh, that'll be that.
Yeah, so I'm mainly on Instagram. It's Nicole
Hmm.
Res Fit. And then my coaching is through Strong Starts Within. We also have an Instagram page. And then I have a link tree in my bio for any type of open questions or coaching application.
All right, cool. Well, Nicole, I appreciate you coming on, and I will see you at the gym, and we'll do this again.
Yes, sounds good.
All right, sweet. Thank you.